So, welcome to my kitchen. We're going to try my wireless headset and see how this turns out. I've got a couple different cameras set up here, so hopefully I can create something of semi-decent usefulness here. So we're not mixing up washes. We're not painting anything today. We are actually making my newer tradition holiday gin infusion here. So if you are not 21 and over, blah, 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 don't watch this. It's bad for you. Don't kill your liver, kids. Yeah. But for you adult drinking age folks, if you happen to like blackberry pie, then maybe this is something you want to watch. Maybe you'll decide if you want to experiment with it. So you're going to need blackberries. Now, I grow my own in my garden. Usually freeze some here. Don't have to be whole, they can be mashed up, it doesn't matter. You're getting the flavor of the juices and the berries, and they're going to be soaking in a vat of gin or whatever alcohol you choose. I choose gin because it's very botanical, kind of fruity, and it works well for this. You're going to need some apples, usually a green one, like a Granny Smith there, and then a variety of maybe a wet red delicious, some Honey Crisp here. I got a few. I have some trees in my garden I planted a number of years back, so I'm actually getting some apples now. And I also do some Cosmic Crisp. Those ones I bought at the store. That's a newer breed the university here in Washington State came up with. So, good stuff. And you're going to end up cutting those up into slices and mixing various slices from all the different apple types together, and they'll be going into the jar. So I'm going to start by cutting up these apples here. Exciting stuff. Sometimes I use one of these push-through slicers. These do make pretty thick pieces though, and if I'm making a few jars, I might go back with a big knife and half those in size yet again, just to give you smaller pieces, more surface area, more infusion and mixing of the flavors in the jar. Alright, so once you get your apples and you got your blackberries, you're going to need a mason jar. I use the 1 quart mason jars. That's my now default size. I could do a bigger jug of this all at once, but I might want to give away some of these at Christmas to friends, so I usually make 3 or 4 of the smaller quart size ones. It's a little easier to manage too when you're pouring it out later to strain it and such, so personal preference. I know I've watched videos over in the UK where they use like the gallon jugs, so they get serious about this at the holidays. Those ones were pretty much berries and sugar and apples. I kind of took that and ran with it and tweaked it. Sweeteners, you can use normal sugar, or I use a monk fruit blend. It's a blend of monk fruit and usually there's alcohol sugar or something else in there that makes it, granular, and you can substitute it in when you're baking cookies and stuff if you want. In this case, it works fine for sweetening these drinks and just cutting some carbs out. Yeah, it is totally up to you what you want to use here. I usually use 3/4 to a cup per jar. Again, you just gotta find your sweetness level you want. Once you've made 1 or 2 batches of this, then you kind of start to figure out your own personal ratios of these things. In this case, I want to do 3 jars in total before I'm done here. I'm going to do one with normal sugar, which is this darker sugar here, and 2 with monk fruit. Next, I usually add 1 to 2 cups of blackberries. Now, I bought these ones at Costco, and I gotta say, they were terrible. I don't even know why I stuck them in here. I tried a few plain, and flavor-wise, they did not impress. They were not sweet, they were not tart, they were damn near flavorless. So I resorted back to my own frozen berries I had left over from the summer. Because again, it doesn't matter if they're frozen or beat up and frozen. It's all good. This is just a bunch of different varieties I have. Most of mine are kind of native to Washington State here, Cascadia, the smaller ones, and then some of the Himalaya wild ones, which really make better cobbler than pie, but we won't get into the particulars of that. And then there's another variety that's kind of between the two that's actually something that's cultivated and you can buy the starts for and plant. So just a mix, no one particular type of blackberry here. After I add in the blackberries, I usually grab a third or a half, depending on how I snap it, of a whole cinnamon stick here. So basically I'm chucking in about a half in each of these. Then after that, I buy these they're kind of like dried vanilla beans. Costco here carries them around the fall, Thanksgiving time, usually same time that you see the whole cinnamon stick show up in the spice aisle. And these you can either use a half or whole. I would start with a half, and you basically split it lengthwise, just so the alcohol will get in there and get into it. I slice them up a bit more than that even. They're kind of funky if you've never seen where vanilla comes from. It's interesting. It's kind of like a dried leathery bean, for lack of a better description. Smells good though. I split that open and maybe break it into a few chunks even, because we're going to just strain this all anyways when we go to drink this alcohol. So don't worry about little pieces and things. You're going to take all those out in the end. After the vanilla, I usually try to envision at least one whole apple's worth of slices, a big apple, right? But I'll take a sampling from each type of the apples I cut up. So some of the tart Granny Smith, there's a little Red Delicious, some Honey Crisp, just a few of each slices. And I just cram them in there, trying to get them as much in here as I can, get pretty close to the top with it. Now for the gin, I use this Kirkland brand London Dry Gin. Kirkland is a Costco brand. Not every Costco can carry their hard liquor. That's a more recent thing out here in Washington. So when you're pouring it in, you want to try to get the liquid level all the way to the very top, so that once that lid is screwed on, the apples aren't bobbing up above the liquid surface. You want everything in the gin, nothing floating above and rotting, etc., while it's sitting in your fridge. So that's my goal here. Even if the lid has to push the apples down a little bit, it's all good. I like to use these reusable plastic lids. They have like a silicone ring on the inside for a nice tight seal. Just remember, you don't want to waste a bunch of money on a high-grade gin here. You're going to lose those flavors of it because it's going to absorb in the blackberries, the apple, the spices, the sugars. So you can use something cheaper. You can just go buy the cheap plastic bottle Gordon's, honestly, at the liquor store. I've used that in the past as well. And I had enough here, so I decided to just do one extra jar. So I'm going for 3 this year. Once you get everything in there, you're just going to give it a good initial shake here. That sugar isn't going to magically disappear once you put it in the fridge, because you will want to keep these in your refrigerator. You'll need to go back pretty much daily, because you can see the sugars in there. And you'll give these a shake, usually for about a week every day I do it. It takes longer with the monk fruit. That doesn't dissolve as readily as normal sugar. So usually more 4 to 5 days before I start to see the monk fruit disappear from the bottom of the jar. And usually it only takes 2 or 3 days for the normal sugar. So just depends on what you use. Once the sugars are no longer visible, there's no set rule on how often you need to shake these. I just do it when I'm getting in the fridge, or at least once a week, and that turns out fine. It's really just sitting there infusing all the flavors of the gin, so occasional mix will help keep things stirring around in there. So for the straining process, I use like one of these mason jar funnels, and I usually set that wire mesh strainer into that over a clean jar. So I'm basically just dumping from the final product into a clean jar that will actually be used to store the strained out liquor. They do make little lids similar to these ones I use for when I'm just putting it in the fridge, that actually have a pop-up spout. And so once you have the strained product in a jar, you can put one of those on, and it makes it a heck of a lot easier to pour it. Now, as far as how to drink it, I either like a little bit right over some ice, and just kind of sip at it. But I think the preferred way, at least with my wife and family that visits, is usually some the gin and tonic approach, I guess. Some tonic water, and then add this into that, and then some ice. It's already got sweetness to it and flavor, so beyond that, you really don't need anything. That being said, thanks for stopping by. Happy holidays. Drink responsibly, kids, and I'll see you later.